Daenerys versus Cersei. Something I've been thinking about for quite some time, being on social media for so long and seeing how many people really praise Cersei. I think in a lot of ways that they do it for the same way that am obsessed with Euron Greyjoy, right? I don't like him because I think he's a good person. I like him because I think he's interesting, and I think Cersei is extremely interesting. So probably a lot of the adoration and stuff for Cersei comes from just kind of an interest in her character, and in her plot and things like that. But over the years, especially when I had my first account where I did all of the chapters and did edits and pulled out segments from every chapter, and when I was doing A Feast for Crows, it was really interesting to see the amount of people who like Cersei and really like her and look up to her and are inspired by her, which is fine. I mean, many of the people that I've spoken to about that are sincere. They make points that I agree with sometimes, but I decided to compile like similarities in situations between Dany and Cersei. And so let's start from early life. Both Dany and Cersei's mother died giving birth. Daenerys died giving birth to her, and, quote, her mother died birthing her, and for that her brother had never forgiven her. So Viserys blamed Dany for the death of their mother. Cersei's mother died giving birth to Tyrion. Quote, his sister peered at him with the same expression she had worn since the day that he was born. Cersei never forgave Tyrion for it. So there's a big difference right there, right? Dany is kind of the victim of someone projecting their grief over the death of their mother onto her. And then Cersei is someone who is projecting the death of her mother onto someone else, onto Tyrion. Cersei did this from day one, and a lot of people think that's because of the Valinor prophecy. So the little brother that's going to kill her. It's not. I mean, that probably add to it, but it's really it's from the day that he was born that she decided to harbor this resentment toward him, and it was very pervasive and prevalent. The story in the show where when Oberyn comes to Tyrion in his cell and says, tells that story about Cersei coming into the nursery and grabbing his little wiener until he cried and all that stuff. That's true. That's in the book as well. And the story in the book is actually even kind of sadder because there's all these rumors about Tyrion being born a monster, that he has teeth and fangs and whatever, all this just grotesque stuff. And when Oberyn and Elia came to Casterly Rock to talk to Tywin, it was right when Tyrion was born and right after Joanna had died, and they had Oberyn and Elia had a terrible time there, and when so they go down to the nursery to see Tyrion, this grotesque monster, right? And it's funny when they looked at it, when Oberyn looked at him, he was like, well, yeah, he's kind of a big head and he's a little, but he's a baby, and Elia kind of squealed like a little girl looking at a kitten or something, and she wanted to hold it and hug it. And that's when Cersei, tugged at him and made him cry, and Jaime's like, stop, like you're hurting him. And it's just very sad. So it's from the very beginning, And now look, losing a mother is never having a mother. Losing a mother at any time, never having a mother, all of this stuff is detrimental to children. You losing father as well, not having a father or not having a mother. You're missing something. There's a hole in your heart, a yearning, and so like, so I wonder, is there anyone around Cersei when she was a child that could explain to her that projecting that anger and fear and just sadness, projecting that on to Tyrion, is not a good thing, And maybe there were people that did that, we don't really know. But the one person that could have done that could have helped her get over her anxiety, her fear, her hatred, her scaredness, her loneliness of not having a mother, it could have been Tywin. But he resented Tyrion as well. So the big patriarch that could have been there to guide Cersei and to help her through this psychologically, he was under the same. He didn't like Tyrion either. He blamed Tyrion, and he says as much in that one chapter. And I've done like a million edits about that chapter where he's like, "You'll never have cash liver." It's very sad. It's sad that Cersei didn't have some guidance to help her a little bit with this, because it's sad. Now Daenerys, she had nothing. I mean, her brother blamed her. There was no other adult in the room. I mean, they would go from place to place. It was nothing for her. And she was blamed for the death of her mother. Her dad had died. She didn't really know the truth about her dad. All she knows is just loneliness and fear. I mean, so that's kind of the beginning, like the early life. So there's a difference. Both don't have a mother, and the reactions to not having a mother. Okay, and then we'll move on to the next bit. Another thing I would add to this segment real quick is that even though Dany was a victim of her brother, well, in a lot of ways, but most specifically what we're talking about here is blaming her for the death of their mother, whenever Dany thinks about him, she tends to think pretty fondly of him, and not fondly, but she's sad and she feels bad for him, even though she was treated so badly by him. So contrast that with Cersei, who was the one who was blaming Tyrion for the death of their mother. She never thinks anything but hatefulness toward him. And after he had escaped King's Landing, after he was falsely accused of killing her son, she had ordered that he be killed. And so men were bringing heads of dwarves from all over to her, and so many dwarves were innocently murdered at her behest. And even sometimes if somebody would bring her the wrong head, she would even imprison the people that gave her the wrong head. So just keep that in mind. I mean, it's pretty nasty stuff. Marriage. Oof. This is a controversial one. This is a tough subject. So, okay. Both Dany and Cersei had to marry someone that they probably didn't want to. Dany was terrified of Khal Drogo. Cersei was initially under the impression that she would marry Rhaegar. And then after the rebellion and stuff, they made a political marriage with Robert Baratheon. Now both of them had to marry people that they probably didn't want to marry, right? Daenerys was absolutely terrified of Khal Drogo. This beast of a man, with a very, very different culture, terrifying, right? Cersei and Robert were kind of the same culture. They, but Cersei kind of wanted Rhaegar, was digging that silver hair kind of thing. But in the beginning, it was like kind of okay because at their marriage, there was a lot of people, you know, like cheering and, whoa, yay, our new king and queen, and, you know, a new era. But the first time that Cersei and Robert slept together, Robert said Lyanna's name. And it just, whew, don't do that to Cersei. The first time that Dany and Khal Drogo slept together was terrifying, absolutely terrifying for her. The amount of bravery, though, and you know, and I talk about this sometimes. I've done some edits and stuff about this. I think that Dany was extremely brave that night. So the show has her basically being marital raped, but you know, she does say yes. But as the time went on, so kind of the culture of the Dothraki, I think, is kind of like, you know, so the Khal would kind of hang out with his guys all day. She was riding horses all day. She's very sore. She felt isolated, lonely. The language was different. Everything was different. He would hang out with his boys all day and then come into the tent and, you know, claim his rights, right? Marital rape, because she didn't like it. Same thing with Cersei. Robert would, you know, drink all day. He'd come in and just, you know, this big nasty body, you know, and she was marital raped. I mean, same thing, really. I mean, honestly, very similar. So here's the difference, and here's going to be kind of the controversial part. Daenerys had a dream, and it made her feel stronger. So right by the dragon eggs, and she felt stronger. And from that day on, she really decided that she would take charge. She's not going to have this shitty marriage. She's not going to kill herself. She's not going to endure this pain anymore. And because she was suicidal at that time, and it turned out great. I mean, she took initiative. She changed the dynamic of the relationship. Khal Drogo changed. He loved it, and they had, you know, a short time together where they were doing quite well. Cersei, however, look, it's different people's perspectives, different people's situations, the way different people react to things, okay? So okay, instead of trying to make things work, I mean, it was just, you know, look at what Catelyn did with Eddard, you know. She tried to make it work even though he had an affair and brought home a bastard child or whatever, right? She handled it in a horrible way because she projected, I say project all the time, she projected all of that, you know, hatred for the fact that he cheated on her onto the child, onto Jon, which is wrong, but she still tried to make the relationship work, you know. I mean, I could do a whole Catelyn thing another time, but she still tried to make the relationship work till, you know, for the kids and for the family and everything like that. Cersei, however, I mean, nothing of the sort, right? She decided to keep the relationship up with Jaime, to have 3 children with Jaime, claimed that they were Robert's children. You know, I mean, that not only puts, you know, her and Jaime at risk if the truth came out, but it puts those children at risk. I mean, you know, we see in the beginning of A Game of Thrones, you know, Jon Arryn and Stannis Baratheon were on the case. You know, they knew this was happening, and you know, when Eddard comes, he's taken up the mantle on the case of this, and this is a very, very dangerous situation. I mean, if you want to kind of rebel because you're stuck in a shit situation with a shitty husband, you know, that's fine, but the decisions that she makes, I think, are just so detrimental to so many things. Like, it's just a bad thing. Actually, I don't think I have any quotes written down for this because I was just kind of like free talk it, but yeah, but that's just my thing. And I've, you know, and look, when I was doing this for a long time, there's this weird thing in like 2016 where, you know, I would like make edits about Dany and Drogo or whatever, and I mean, I would just get like hate on it, and I'm just like, what? Like, why are you so mad about this?
Mommy, there's a fire.
There's a fire?
A fire.
Oh.
get fire.
Okay, well, be careful. You better get a fire truck to put it out.
Yeah, we did get fire.
Oh, you did? Okay, good. Okay, good.
And we got burnt, so there was an ambulance that came too.
Oh, okay, good. So, but I didn't really know what was going on, why people were so mad about it, because I do feel like the Danny and Drogo trope is just like an old trope, right? It's like, it's a Beauty and the Beast thing, right? It's exactly what, George R. R. Martin is kind of obsessed with. George R. R. Martin, by the way, is not woke on the Beauty and the Beast thing, and he doesn't realize that it's, evil or something. But it's an old trope, right? You have the kind of the young girl taming the crazy man or whatever. I mean, this has been in our kind of collective history and memory of writing forever, just forever. But Cersei kind of takes that and she's like, and so for me, I guess, being an old-fashioned kind of person, I think it's just horrible, but I think it's like interesting, so I can see where people are interested in it, but it's also very irresponsible. There's, do you, like, all these people are in marriages that probably they don't want to be in, especially back then, right? So, but do you think that, Stannis wants to be married to Celeste? I would say no, but he goes in there like a man going to war, and he does his duty, he does it. I'm sorry, I don't mean to make light of it, it is bad what Cersei went through on that, but I think that her response to it was, if you compare it to Dany, since we're doing a Dany Cersei thing, is less admirable or something. I don't know. Okay, we'll go on to the next bit. So another thing I would add real quick to the marriage segment is how they act in future relationships after their marriages had ended in death, which is another similarity, except some could say that Dany had a part in Khal Drogo's death if she had just kind of backed off and not had listened and didn't have that witch do what she did, which was a pretty foolish decision, but of course a learning lesson, or it's a learning opportunity for her as well. She probably won't trust Magi's in the future, right? But then of course, contrasted with the death of Cersei's husband Robert, she kind of had him killed, right? But anyway, so let's just talk about the future, how these marriages affected their future relationships. So for Daenerys, the first kind of thing that ever happened to her was after Drogo died was that Jorah kissed her. And that was kind of a really weird situation. I think I've done a lot of edits and talked about that a lot on here. It always kind of weirds me out, and it weirded her out quite a bit. She didn't really know what to think of it. But the night that he had done that, this is kind of like that famous where she, hooks up with Irri, her handmaiden. But it wasn't like a romantic thing. It was just kind of like getting the job done kind of thing, right? And she was, and after that she was a little embarrassed about it afterwards, and so it wasn't really that significant to her. And then she had her relationship with Daario Naharis, who I never really can blame her for liking him. I mean, I think it's it's kind of a schoolgirlish kind of crush, which on a guy that I don't know, a lot of girls would be attracted to, I suppose. Although in the book he has like weird color hair and like a forked beard and stuff, so I don't know. But in the show, those depictions of him, I mean, I can understand being attracted to him. And she knows that it's not going to go anywhere and things like that. But she does really have quite a, she really likes him a lot. And that actually goes well. I feel like that relationship is actually kind of healthy. I mean, kind of it's a fling, a lot of people have that. And I never really find anything about that relationship odd. And then she after that, and we'll talk about her marriage, her second marriage a little bit later. So I don't really want to get into that. But, and then, so let's contrast that with Cersei. So throughout Cersei's entire, hold on a second, throughout her, almost her entire life, she's had a relationship with Jaime, right? This was before Robert, during Robert, and after Robert. So
Mommy, my hand.
Her relationship with him obviously is rocky. It goes through its ups and downs. But in the middle of it, any other relationships that she's had, she would sleep with men to get things in return, right? It was always, she would always use her sexuality to get things. And I never blame her necessarily for that, because I think that, everyone, please don't do that. I think that every man in her family, she always kind of feels like a victim because she's a woman, and women can't do the same thing or get the same respect as men can. So she's always finding, Jaime has his skill with his sword, Tyrion has his brilliance, Tywin has his power position and his brilliance, and, she feels like she doesn't have anything except for her sexuality, so she uses that to her advantage. So I actually don't ever really get too mad at her about that. What I get mad at her about is just the lying. I just think the lying and stuff, and cheating on Jaime. I mean, Jaime absolutely adores this woman. Absolutely adores her, would do anything for her. The thing that got him through his imprisonment was the thought of getting back to her. He never cheated on her. He had plenty of opportunities. Believe me, he's like the most handsome man, in Westeros probably. And so to kind of just to poop on that kind of love that he has for her, I always thought that part of it was bad. I mean, if she wasn't in the relationship with Jaime and she was doing that stuff, I wouldn't even be mad. I'd just be like, whatever. Like, she is using the power that she possesses to get ahead. It's just a lot of the people that she slept with, and the lies that she was telling. It was just dumb. She's not a very good strategist. She makes a lot of dumb decisions. Okay, so. But she, like Dany, had a relationship with a woman as well. And this was not just a handmaiden. This was not, something that, just kind of to get the job done or whatever, right? It was a lady by the name of Tiana Merriweather. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it. I don't have her name in front of me. But, so the weird thing about this relationship is I feel like she really, really actually likes her a lot, and is happy when she's around. She enjoys talking to her. She considers her a friend, and Cersei doesn't have very many friends, especially girlfriends, people that she can talk to, and so I think she considers her a friend. And whenever they started, the first inclination of her wanting to kind of, or the first time she felt sexually attracted to her, the thoughts that went on in her mind about it were pretty disturbing. It was like she wanted to know what it was like to be almost in a, be Robert, to overwhelm her, overpower her, to, be the one in charge of the sexual encounter. And I think that's weird, because it's it's not necessarily weird, because usually victims a lot of the times become victimizers, so it's not that it's unusual. But you contrast that with Daenerys, and she never thought like that. I mean, there was never one moment where she thought that since she was sexually dominated at one point, that she wanted to be a sexual dominator. It was just never like that for Dany. Every relationship that she had after Drogo was pure and good intentioned. Not so for Cersei. I mean, everything was selfish and pretty bad intentioned, if you look at it that way. All right, so that's it. In power. So here we get to kind of the meat of it. Let's first do their council, who they keep, the company they keep while they're in power. Here's a quote from Dany that I really like. "Only lies offend me, not honest counsel." So when it comes to the council, let's focus on two people. For Dany, let's focus on Jorah. For Cersei, let's focus on Jaime. Both Cersei and Jaime, or both Dany and Cersei, had to get rid of these two men. And these two men were the closest people to them. Okay. Why did they get rid of these two men? Well, Dany got rid of Jorah because she found out that Jorah was selling secrets, or had been selling secrets, back to Robert Baratheon. Why did Cersei get rid of Jaime? Make him go, to the Riverlands and stuff? to get him the hell out of her way. Because unlike that quote I just read from Danny that says only lies offend me, not honest counsel, everything offends Cersei if it doesn't meet her agenda. And Jaime was telling her things that she didn't want to hear. She gets rid of everybody that tells her things she doesn't want to hear. She's one of those people that need yes men around her. That's not good. It's never good. It happens a lot with, people in power. And those people are usually the ones that are not so great. Before I get into some of the quotes here, because I'm going to make this pretty quick, the Jaime and Jorah thing, but one of the things that I love about Stannis Baratheon is that he keeps Davos around. Davos tells him things that Stannis does not want to hear a lot of the times, but he never gets rid of Davos. I mean, he'll threaten it, he'll things like that, but he knows that he needs a man like Davos by his side, and that is so honorable to me. Dany wouldn't have got rid of Jorah if it wasn't on principle, and she was happy to embrace Barristan Selmy, and she's really lucky to have him. And I always say that. But okay, so let's just compare thoughts. Okay, so on Jorah's exile, Dany says, "Thanks. This is my Jorah, my fierce bear, the right arm that never failed me. I would be dead without him. I must not weep. If I weep, I will forgive him." Now here is Cersei on Jaime something to do, right? Get him the hell out of there. Okay. "I need to get rid of him, and soon. He was meant to be my sword and my shield, my strong right arm. Why does he insist on vexing me?" So I just love these two quotes to get as a contrast, because they're both talking about, their right arms, their swords, and having to get rid of that. They're really their closest people in their lives, and it just couldn't be for more different reason, So that's just something that just irritates me so much. Okay, so I picked out two of the big decisions that both Dany and Cersei made during the time that they were had held some kind of power. Okay, let's start with the faith militant, bringing back the faith militant. Okay, so this is a complex issue. This is a complex issue. Okay. So Cersei thinks that sorry, I was just reading the notes there. My notes are just ridiculous. I'm not very good at this. Okay, so the faith militant. So Cersei thinks that bringing back the faith militant will be a good idea for her, because they would, wipe out heretics, and this would be a good way to get rid of Stannis Baratheon, right? Because I mean, look, who's a heretic? He is with the Red God, with R'hllor now, right? So she thinks that's a good idea. She also thinks that she thinks all kinds of things. Like, she thinks this is really going to help her. She thinks it's going to help, she can expose Margaery as being an adulteress, and all of her little, girlfriends that she hangs out with, they're all, a bunch of sluts or whatever. And so she just thinks this is a great idea, right? Not even remotely thinking about, okay, everything that I'm accusing Margaery of, like, I'm doing, and I did, and I'm guilty of all of this. Like, how could she not think that it would turn back on her? You bring back these people who are, religious fanatics, and she does things that are against their religion. She doesn't think this is going to come back and bite her in the ass? I mean, it's so ridiculous. Okay, so, but this is something that I really kind of love, this quote. Okay, so on bringing back the faith militants. What did she care about Maegor the Cruel? What did she care that Maegor the Cruel had decreed 300... Wait, hold on. Okay, sorry. I don't want to restart the whole thing, but what did she care what Maegor the Cruel had decreed 300 years ago? Even her Lord Father could not have done any better. Okay, so Maegor the Cruel got rid of the faith militant in the first place. And And I said, and I did an edit a really long time ago. I said, you know, you could not have Jaehaerys if you did not have Maegor. Because what Maegor did by snuffing those guys out, he made it to where they could keep on going, that the Targaryen regime could keep on going. I mean, you know, so she doesn't care about history. She's not looking back at the problems that it had. And she knows, I mean, she even tells, you know, Tana, like, about the history of it in that chapter that she does this. So she knows, she just doesn't care. It's like, oh, who cares what Maegor did? You know, he's a fucking idiot or whatever. You know, and then she praises herself. Even her Lord Father could not have done any better. Oh, it's such a bad decision. I mean, and just the fact that she can't see that she's bringing back these people who, when they find out what she's been doing, they are going to get her. All right, so let's contrast that with one of the things that Dany did. I want to say this is while she was in power, but one of the decisions that she made getting to power was purchasing the Unsullied. Okay, this created a huge moral dilemma in her. So you contrast like this moral dilemma that she's having doing this, because she's morally against slavery, and the Unsullied are slaves, and they are people who had been, you know, if you read about how they're trained and the things that they have to go through, it's absolutely aberrant. I mean, it's just awful. So for Dany, it's like, okay, should I do this? You know, so here's some of her thoughts. The blood of my enemies I will shed gladly. The blood of innocents is another matter. 8,000 unsullied they would offer me. 8,000 dead babies. 8,000 strangled dogs. Did the men at the Trident give their lives for Rhaegar's cause because they believed in Rhaegar's cause, or because they had been bought and paid for? So see the difference there. Like, she's thinking about the past. She's thinking about, you know, what Rhaegar would have done. She's reflecting on this morally. She cares. You know, what does this mean? What does this make me if I purchase these, you know, these people who are treated so cruelly? You know, what does that mean? Is that a good thing to do or a bad thing to do? Does the conquering Westeros mean that much to me? You know, she's thinking about this stuff. Cersei doesn't think about any of that stuff. She thinks about what she wants in the immediate, instant gratification, and it's just such a telling thing. It's like, you know, they say, like, you know, differences in intelligence is being able to delay instant gratification, right? And think about things, but anyway. All right, so yeah, so another thing that that they do here's another just thing that I think is interesting. So Cersei imprisons and tortures perceived enemies. Daenerys imprisoned her own dragons because they posed a threat to people, right? So think about that. Cersei imprisons and tortures anyone that she perceives to be an enemy. Two stories stand out to me is false Stokeworth and the Blue Bard. I always talk about the Blue Bard. I've done like, okay. So she just imprisons them. I mean, in just to suit her narrative, just to protect her ass, you know? Daenerys, imprisoned her own dragons. The things that would win her the throne, because they posed a threat to people. So Cersei imprisons people that pose a threat to her, or a perceived threat most of the time, not even an actual threat. And then Dany imprisons her, the thing that could get her the throne. So I just think that's a big thing there too. Okay, and then yeah, just real quick on the marrying of his Dar. Okay, so Dany had to marry this guy named Hizdahr. And she puts her own happiness behind her, so that, because she loves Daario, she would love to continue that relationship with him. But she puts that behind her for the people, because she thinks that if she makes this political marriage with him, that it would stop the harpy from terrorizing and things like that. And I mean, maybe that was a bad decision, probably, I don't know. But here's a quote. Does it matter that his stars kisses do not please me? Peace will please me. Am I a queen or just a woman? Am I a queen or just a woman? And I do think that Cersei acts out of just hedonism, immediate just hedonism, and not thinking about the long run. And even if Dany made a wrong decision to marry him, she did it out of selflessness. And I mean, she's not attracted to the guy at all. He's actually not a bad looking guy in the books, but he's weird and whatever. Okay, so that'll be on that. But there's there's a bunch of other stuff that you could contrast it to. I just think those are probably the most interesting. Final act. So by the end of the last chapters of Cersei and Dany, and at the end of A Dance with Dragons, they are both in extremely vulnerable situations, to say the least, right? This is a huge similarity. The actions that we talked about before all led them up to this point. So some of the things that I think is really interesting. So they both must keep walking. Dany has to keep walking by the river because the river is going to be, her only kind of source. And then Cersei has to keep on walking toward the Red Keep because obviously that's going to be her endgame, right? Getting back to the Red Keep. So keep walking. They both talk about this a lot. They both must keep walking throughout the whole ordeal. And I do recommend reading Cersei's last chapter and Daenerys' last chapter, and you see so explicitly the difference in sorry, my posture is always so bad. All right, in this camera angle, just the difference in just kind of the thoughts and the things that brought them there. But actually, the last chapter, they're not too terribly different. Dany and Cersei both lost their hair. They're both bald. One of my favorite parts in the last Daenerys chapter is she has to forge a hat, and she's trying to weave a hat, and she's like, I'm the blood of the dragon, I can make a hat, but she can't. And Cersei's constantly thinking, oh, I'm the queen, I'm beautiful, people love me. But when she's there, naked and vulnerable, it's like, I'm not, I'm not, people are, well, not that she's not, but people are, yelling horrible things to her. And it's just, both these end chapters for Daenerys and Cersei are very interesting to me. And they see things, right? They both see, so in their, Cersei thinks that she sees Maggie the Frog. Dany thinks that she hears Quaithe. The two kind of prophets that are telling her things. Cersei thinks about Jaime, of course. Is he going to come? Is he going to help me? Daenerys thinks about Jorah. It's actually very similar in a lot of weird ways. Yeah, keep on walking. They both lost their hair. Of course, Dany lost earlier. Sees Quaithe. Cersei sees Maggie the Frog. I just think, there's so much stuff, and even, I did this whole thing, and I haven't even spouted out my thoughts that much as you could, and for something like this. But I do think that at the end of the day, let's get real here. I always have a thought that anyone who thinks that their favorite character is better than someone else's character, or this person could be a better queen, or whatever, it doesn't really matter. I think the beauty of the story, the way that George R. R. Martin wrote it, the way that it's up for interpretation, for every individual to read it, and interpret it in any way that they want to. I think that's the magic of it. And I will always be grateful for these queens. Although Cersei's just psychotic. Psychotic. I mean, in my opinion. And you know, and Dany could very well become psychotic. I don't see it. I mean, I think there'd be a lot of work to be done. But anyway, this was a long thing. I hope you liked it. I don't know. What do I say? Hail, you're on, King.